Most people watching the PGA Tour right now are focused on results. Who won? Who lost? Who's leading? But if you zoom out just a little, there's something much more interesting happening beneath the surface. This week isn't just another stop on the calendar. It's actually revealing a shift in how players are dealing with pressure, scheduling, and the reality of competing at the highest level. And the strange part is, you can see that shift playing out in two completely different ways at the exact same time. One group of players is stepping away right after one of the biggest tournaments of the year, while another is doing the exact opposite, jumping straight back into competition without hesitation. And when you put those two approaches side by side, it starts to tell a much bigger story about where the PGA Tour stands right now. So instead of just looking at scores or leaderboards, it's worth taking a closer look at what's really going on this week, because there's more here than it seems at first glance. If you follow the tour closely, you already know that the RBC Heritage isn't just a regular event. It's one of the newer signature tournaments, which means a limited field, no cut, and a massive purse sitting at around $20 million. It also comes at a very specific moment in the schedule, right after Augusta, when emotions are still high and players are either riding momentum or dealing with disappointment. On paper, this should create one of the strongest fields of the season, and in many ways it does. But at the same time, there's something noticeably different about it this year. Several of the biggest names in golf are simply not here. Not because they couldn't be, but because they chose not to be. And that decision alone says a lot about how demanding this stretch of the season has become. Take Rory McIlroy, for example. Coming off a Masters victory, there's an expectation that he would carry that momentum forward and show up again the very next week. But instead, he steps away. And when you really think about it, that decision makes sense. Winning at Augusta isn't just another victory. It's an emotional peak that takes everything out of you. The preparation, the pressure, the attention, it all builds toward that moment. So choosing to take time off afterward isn't avoidance, it's recovery. It's understanding that maintaining performance at this level isn't just about playing more, it's about knowing when not to. And historically, this isn't even a tournament he regularly commits to. His appearances here have been limited and his results haven't exactly stood out. So rather than forcing another start, he makes a calculated decision to step back. Then there's Justin Rose, whose situation is almost the opposite emotionally, but leads to the same outcome. Instead of coming off a win, he's coming off a loss that was incredibly close. Leading into the final round at Augusta and then watching it slip away is a different kind of exhaustion. It's not physical, it's mental. That kind of disappointment can linger, especially when it follows a pattern of near misses, like the playoff situation he experienced the year before. So instead of immediately jumping back into another high-pressure environment, he steps away as well. And again, that decision reflects awareness. Not weakness, not avoidance, but understanding what it takes to reset at this level. Other absences feel less emotional and more strategic. Hideki Matsuyama, for instance, simply doesn't prioritize this event. His history at the course hasn't been strong, and his schedule has always been selective. Even with a solid finish at Augusta, there's no real reason for him to adjust his routine just to fit this tournament in. The same can be said for Adam Scott, who actually qualified for the field, but still chose not to play. His recent performances at Harbour Town haven't produced strong results, and at this stage of his career, decisions like this are less about opportunity and more about efficiency. It's not about playing every event, it's about playing the right ones. And then there's another category of players who aren't here for a completely different reason. They didn't choose to skip. They simply didn't qualify. That's where the structure of these signature events becomes more visible. Players like Aaron Rowe find themselves in a position where past performances aren't enough and current rankings don't open the door. Without being inside the top thresholds or earning specific exemptions, there's no entry point. The same situation applies to someone like Tom Kim, whose form has dropped significantly. Not long ago, he was competing at a much higher level, but right now, the results aren't there. And on this tour, that matters immediately. There's no buffer, no waiting period. Performance dictates opportunity, and when performance dips, access disappears just as quickly. If you look even deeper into the list of players trying to get in or missing out entirely, the level of competition becomes even clearer. Established names and rising talent are both caught in this system, all competing for a limited number of spots. And that's where the current format of the PGA Tour really shows its intensity. These events are designed to be exclusive, which raises the level of competition, but also increases the pressure on everyone trying to stay inside that circle. It's no longer just about playing well occasionally. Consistency is everything, and even a short drop in form can push a player completely out of these high-profile opportunities. But while all of this is happening, there's another story unfolding at the same time that almost feels like a direct contrast. Because not everyone is stepping away or missing out. Some players are doing the exact opposite, showing up immediately after Augusta and putting themselves right back into competition. And the most notable example of that this week is Scottie Scheffler. Just days after finishing near the top at the Masters, he arrives at Harbour Town and begins his next round of competition without any visible pause. What stands out isn't just the decision to play, but how he's playing. His opening round doesn't begin perfectly. In fact, it starts with a mistake that could have easily shifted the tone of the entire day. A tee shot goes out of bounds on the very first hole, immediately putting pressure on him to recover. But instead of allowing that moment to define the round, he stabilizes. He limits the damage, regains control, and begins building momentum through a series of well-executed shots. Birdies follow, mistakes are contained, and by the end of the round, he's positioned himself competitively once again. The interesting part is that this performance doesn't come from dominance in every area. In fact, some parts of his game aren't at their usual level. His driving, for example, isn't as precise as expected. But other aspects compensate. His short game, his ability to recover, his control around the greens, all of these elements keep him in contention. And that adaptability is what defines players at the very top. It's not about playing perfectly every day. It's about finding a way to stay competitive, even when certain parts of your game aren't fully working. When he speaks about his approach, it becomes even clearer. There's a consistency in how he prepares and competes, regardless of what happened the week before. Whether it's a win, a loss, or a near miss, the process doesn't change, and that consistency removes emotional swings from his performance. There's no visible carryover from Augusta. No frustration, no hesitation, just a clear transition into the next challenge. That mindset is what allows him to move from one event to another without losing momentum. The course itself also plays a role in this dynamic. Harbour Town isn't built for power alone. It requires precision, shot shaping, and strategic thinking. Players have to navigate tight fairways, control their ball flight, and adapt to a layout that doesn't reward aggression in the same way modern courses often do. That kind of environment naturally highlights players who rely on control and decision-making rather than just distance. And for someone like Scheffler, that becomes an advantage. There's also something to be said about the broader recognition he's receiving beyond the course. Being included in the Time 100 Most Influential People reflects a level of impact that goes beyond performance. But what stands out is how he responds to that recognition. Instead of focusing on status, he frames it in terms of influence and responsibility. That perspective aligns with the way he approaches the game itself, grounded, consistent, and focused on long-term impact rather than short-term reactions. When you step back and look at everything together, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. On one side, players are stepping away to recover, reset, or manage their schedules. On the other, players are pushing forward immediately, maintaining rhythm and continuity. Both approaches are valid, and both reflect different ways of handling the same level of pressure. But together, they highlight just how demanding the current structure of the tour has become. This isn't just about individual decisions. It's about the environment those decisions are being made in. The schedule is tighter, the stakes are higher, and the margin for error is smaller. Every tournament carries more weight, especially these signature events where access is limited and competition is concentrated. That changes how players think about when to compete and when to step back. For fans, this creates a different kind of experience. It's no longer just about watching who wins each week. It's about understanding the patterns behind those results. Who is choosing to play more aggressively through the schedule? Who is pacing themselves? Who is able to maintain form over long stretches and who struggles to recover after big moments? All of those factors start to shape the season in ways that aren't always obvious at first. And as the season continues, those decisions will start to matter even more. Because eventually, it won't just be about who has the most talent. It will be about who managed their energy, their schedule, and their mindset the best over time. That's where championships are decided. Not just in single rounds or single tournaments, but in how players navigate everything leading up to them. So what we're seeing this week isn't just a random set of absences or performances. It's a snapshot of a much bigger dynamic. A tour that's evolving, a structure that's becoming more demanding, and players who are constantly adjusting to stay competitive within it. If you're someone who enjoys looking at the game from that perspective, not just the highlights but the patterns behind them, then this is one of the most interesting stretches of the season to watch. Because every decision, every performance, and every absence is adding to a larger story that's still unfolding. And as always, if you're following along with everything happening on the PGA Tour, feel free to share your thoughts, because this is one of those moments where different perspectives actually make the conversation better.